The era of FHM is coming to an end after 30 years.
Britpop, iconic, 90s, FHM, ladette culture. I mean, that was what it was all about. And it was fun.
FHM for me, back then, was career-changing.
It wasn't just a magazine with hot women in it, it was everything.
Kebabs, brilliant. There's a whole feature about kebabs. This is classic, isn't it?
There's a whole naked body there, but no, you can't have a nipple.
The hugely successful mantra of FHM was always funny, sexy, useful.
It was like, is it funny? Yes. Is it sexy? Yes. Is it useful? Yes. Ideally, it's all three.
Dump your girlfriend properly.
Oh, wow.
Like, for the man that's too pussy to do it.
I don't know if it was the reading that attracted us to the FHM.
More the girls.
More the front page.
Pervin.
Yeah.
To me, it represented such a great moment in time.
You know, it was just a really exciting time and everything felt really big and celebrated and exciting.
FHM graced our shelves for an incredible 30 years. It went from a humble fashion magazine to the centre of the publishing galaxy.
The power that FHM had back then was unbelievable.
As a lifestyle Bible, it taught lads how to look sharp, what music to listen to, how to be a legend between the sheets and look better on the dance floor.
Girls, girls. Gadgets, girls.
The magazine can rightfully boast it changed the landscape of Britain in the 90s and noughties, as its lad culture was embraced by both men and women.
The 90s heyday, when it seemed like women ruled the world and ruled television.
Over the next hour, we look at how FHM told men it was OK to be a lad.
They do like girls, they do like film, and not to be ashamed about that.
And how different attitudes have become.
The term lad now is a badge of shame. Then it was a badge of honour.
We'll catch up with the women who shaped FHM's history and are still etched into our teenage memories.
I mean, they hired me to do some of their covers, and the amount of money they were paying me, sign me up.
That's not bad, is it?
You can judge me all you like, but you know what? My arse has been on Parliament.
But lads' mags had their detractors who felt they devalued women and wanted them banned.
The content of these magazines exceeded anything that any normal person would consider to be reasonable.
Whether you loved or hated what it stood for, FHM is about to close its doors forever.
I'm sad to see the back of it. I think actually it has its place, but having said that, it's no longer relevant, is it really?
As the magazine goes to print one final time, we go behind the scenes and give the last lads mag a very special send-off.
Holly Willoughby.
Yeah. I was meant to say Holly Willoughby.
Yeah, oh my God, what a babe. You just would, wouldn't you?
Whatever. I'm sure she's lovely. My arse was great.
To find out where this all began, we need to gently hold your hand and take you back to a time when greed was good and mobiles were massive. Yes, it's the mid-80s when, guess what? We were just coming out of recession.
In the early 80s, you know, the landscape of men's magazines was this incredibly boring, aspirational yet dull thing of politicians, guys in suits, businessmen.
Then in 1985, a new magazine was born. For him was aimed at a new reader, the stylish yuppie.
I remember it being called For Him magazine. And so I remember seeing it and thinking that there were men on the cover.
Was it an antidote to all those grey men in suits? No.
This is the first issue from spring '85, and the first article is all about building a classic wardrobe.
And it was kind of, you know, tips from Silicon Valley, you know, and it made us feel like failures because we would never work in Silicon Valley. and work in a factory.
So if the readership were young men, they must have had some girls on the cover to pull in the punters, surely.
We had an actual editorial policy not to put any girly pictures in there. We did not want to be thought that we were a top-shelf magazine. We avoided any sort of celebrities.
Eventually, the penny dropped and the magazine started putting stylish celebrities on the cover. It was the decadent 80s, for goodness sake. So who would it be? Brian Ferry? David Bowie? Oh.
The worst cover in any magazine ever had Phil Collins' bald head. It's like, what are you doing? Like, nobody wants to be Phil Collins, not even Phil Collins.
But it was quite a good statement that we were moving into a different era.
For him, magazine trundled along for the rest of the 80s without setting the world on fire. But as the decade came to an end, and we went from boom back to bust, a massive cultural change was in the air. Before our eyes in 1990 came the birth of The Lad, showcased on TV programmes such as The Word, and Britain would never be the same again.
Come and sit here, Rob. We'll be chatting and getting real big. Ow! Charming.
There was sort of nothing else worth watching on a Friday night. And I remember there was I'll Do Anything to Get on TV, and in particular there was Snog a Granny. So it was repulsive television, but at the same time, you know, strangely addictive.
In 1992, a brand new, groundbreaking breakfast show was redefining television and unleashing the ultimate lad.
Today's question of the day is what Madeline...
It was mental working in television in the 90s. Honestly, mental.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Right.
You're going to leave now?
Suddenly, bad behaviour was in. It was a lucrative and loud business, and magazines began to reflect this. 8 years in, For Him magazine was embracing 90s culture, but found itself with some serious competition. The brand new Loaded magazine was bigger, brasher and blokier.
Loaded was very much about, we've got this group of guys in the office, they're living the most incredible rock and roll lifestyle, and you can come and read about that and be hugely entertained.
You like dangerous sports? Go to these, do these 100 things where you can kill yourself. You like sex? Here's how to be better. You like music? We went to a gig with this guy and his nose exploded when he was on drugs.
Do you know what? Loaded was very funny, and I completely got their humour.
It was celebratory and, you know, it was a party that you were invited to.
Loaded encouraged young lads to be hedonistic, take risks, have fun. Don't be ashamed of looking at beautiful women.
You saw more boobs in Loaded.
Loaded was capturing a huge readership and creating an even bigger buzz. The struggling For Him had to fight back. They'd already relaunched as FHM, though they were still putting blokes on the cover.
Mike Sutol, the editor, brilliantly took the danger of Loaded, which was very hedonistic, very self-indulgent, very kind of gonzo, very out there, and made it much more everyman.
FHM very much took the idea, ran with it, and were by far the more successful brand.
It took a little time to find our way. You know, at the beginning we were still putting men on the cover and just adopted what we'd inherited.
Still had Frank Skinner on the cover, had Michael Hutchence on the cover, and they were just like, looking back, you know, rubbish.
Slowly, a few times there were some women that were put on the cover, and then that was proven to be really successful.
So finally, the FHM we know and love today was born, with girls and glamour galore. Madonna was one of the first women on its cover, and it was suddenly at the top of its game and had class compared to its more down-market rivals.
Loaded was a bit naughtier and, may I say, tackier, and FHM just had a little bit more gloss to it, and it wasn't so overtly sexual, although it was sexual.
FHM felt like it kind of gave men permission to be men, and to be sort of classy men, because they were interested in you know, the body aesthetic, and they were interested in culture. So it was the acceptable face of men's magazines, definitely.
But I don't think anybody really understood or knew or could have ever imagined from the beginning what it would turn into.
The sales figures were just uncontrollable. I mean, sales were like doubling every issue. We're like, oh my God, this is just insane. You know, and it really was, it felt like tapping into a volcano. And it was a volcano that had been suppressed for years because we've been made to feel bad as being men. You know, you should be responsible. You should be a caring, sharing lover. And it's like, oh, come on, just give us a break. We just want to get pissed and get our leg over.
As FHM tapped into that volcano of feelings in young men and began to feature more and more girls on the cover and in the magazine, it became important research material for the curious young man.
It was the magazine that had the hottest girls of that time on the front cover, inside, and it always felt really touchable.
Billy used to have it all laying around my brother, so I used to pick it up, have a look in it, see these gorgeous girls and go, oh my God, I'd love to be one of them girls one day.
Oh, God. So many memories. So many memories.
Yeah, to be fair, like, I probably had all of them hid under my bed, stuck together.
With toothpaste?
Yeah.
Yeah. You brush your teeth in your bed,
I
yeah?
ate a lot of stuff in bed when I was reading. It used to go on.
Clean your teeth and nothing.
Under the bed.
God, all sticky.
Yeah.
I think Cat Deely. Cat Deely was my one. She was just so hot.
Oh. Other people who didn't know maybe the magazine from a different era, like I'm talking about the older generation, like your nans and that, they used to look at you and they'd be like shake their heads.
There was a couple of times where I think my mum picked it up and read it and was a little bit like, I can't believe you're reading this kind of stuff or whatever. I don't know what article she's reading, but at the time, you know, boys will be boys kind of mentality. I don't think it was ever that graphic, but I think it could raise a few eyebrows.
If I went to a bloke's house in my younger years and he had lads mags, I don't think I'd really give a shit. Do you know what? If I won at Scrabble, then I'd worry. If he won at Scrabble, then I'd shag him.
Noted. TV started to reflect how men were feeling and how they were behaving, which was badly.
FHM and Loaded were inextricably linked to the sort of TV of the time. Men behaving badly was what these readers did. Now, they did sit around flats drinking Stella and wondering how they get laid tonight.
Deborah! I love you!
They were the ordinary lads on telly, living the dream. And our readers were able to join in the dream via the TV, and then the pages of the magazines, they all dovetailed back in together, this perfect storm of celebratory laddism.
After the break, Britain goes into labour and gives birth to Britpop.
FHM was killing it.
And FHM has a new girl in its sights as the ladettes take over the high street and our TVs.
Can you slash up against a wall? Me too.
FHM has defined a generation, but all good things come to an end, and its doors will be slamming shut for the very last time. Over the last 30 controversial years, it's turned people onto a whole new type of men's magazine. We're at 1997, and the coming of a new Labour government seemed to bring a wave of optimism to the country.
I was on the battle bus that day and we blasted out, "Things can only get better."
Well, the sort of landscape of British culture at the time was one of hope. Tony Blair felt like somebody at the time, it seems hard to imagine now, he spoke to youngsters, you know, and the musical scene was one of a sort of indulgence and excess.
Cool Britannia swamped the UK in a flood of bright young things. You couldn't move without tripping over a couple of Spice Girls. One of them even bagged a promising young footballer called David Beckham. And the Gallaghers were not only at #1, they were at #10.
Suddenly Blur and Oasis and Pulp were around, and everything changed.
Laddish behaviour, it was completely encouraged. You know, songs about cigarettes, alcohol, drug taking, staying up all night, having sex and not caring. And it gave permission, you know, to a lifestyle.
Britpop, the mid-90s, was all about rejecting the Americanisation of everything, really, that whole aesthetic.
You could be a chef. Jamie Oliver made cooking cool. You could be an artist. Damien Hirst made art cool.
We were taking ownership of who we are, ownership of our own music, ownership of our own look, ownership of our own culture.
You know, it was just a really exciting time and everything felt really big and celebrated and exciting.
You know, we're in this kind of, this emergence of a new era of hope where young people had a voice, and FHM was that voice.
The mag was right in the eye of this cultural storm as they tapped into what young British lads really cared about. And their sales went through the roof.
And I mean, FHM went from a small kind of fashion-based magazine selling 65,000 to a magazine that sold 775,000 in 5 years.
You know, it went from essentially a fanzine that was produced by a bunch of guys in a shed to an international kind of megalith. It was unsurpassable as a business behemoth. You know, it made millions and millions of pounds. And it did that just by talking in ordinary language to ordinary men.
Absolutely flawless. So in the late 1990s, FHM was killing it.
And whilst the magazine's name and cover pages suggested it was only for men, it wasn't only being read by them. Girls up and down the country were embracing this new brazen female sexuality.
FHM had more female readers than perhaps the top 10 women's magazines in Europe.
Girls could definitely enjoy the magazine just as much as boys could, because the articles are humorous, the pictures were just amazing. The girls looked stunning, so you could sit there and just go,
We'd want to find out about film, we'd want to find out about music, we'd want to have a look at actually what the girls are wearing on the cover and whether they're sexy, because we inevitably compared ourselves with them.
Girls would always have a look at FHM just to see what other girls looked like. We're like, oh wow, we see them on television a lot. What do they look like in underwear?
I quite like reading men's magazines anyway, because it gives me an insight into a mind that I don't have.
And perhaps laddism's greatest achievement was the birth of a new phenomenon, the ladette, who survives to this day.
This new word, ladette, kind of came out. So these are girls that behaved a little bit more like boys.
What started on the high street soon made its way onto our screens, with The Girly Show in 1997, and the terrible trio of Rachel Williams, Sarah Kaywood, and Sarah Cox.
We call it Wanker of the Week.
It's Peter Andre. Well, you've been stalked by the girlies, because Peter Andre, you are tonight Wanker of the Week.
Oh, Sarah was just so ballsy. I used to love being around her because she was so cool, and I didn't think that I was.
When the Spice Girls appeared on the show, it was the zenith of the zeitgeist and the perfect storm of ladette TV.
Lots of people have fantasies about the same sex. Do you know what I mean? I've had everyone.
Have any of you?
Sarah Cox and Zoe Ball went hand in hand. They epitomised the 90s. And FHM was there to capture every debauched detail.
A night out with the lads, this is horrible, but a night out with Zoe Ball, Sarah Cox, the ladettes, much more interesting.
I would love to have been that ladette. I would so love to have been that, but I wasn't. I was usually in bed by 11.
Even after a drunken night out, the ladettes were there on your TV first thing in the morning.
Hello, darlings.
have I got news for you.
I think the Ladette culture kind of came to its peak when there were presenters like Denise Van Outen fronting huge shows, The Big Breakfast.
You're watching The Big Breakfast, Channel 4.
Where life starts at 7. Wearing microskirts, wearing low-cut tops with the cleavage, and she didn't care.
Denise proved there's nothing like a hot breakfast, and FHM readily gave its readers a second helping.
Denise Van Outen told me once that she went straight from the Smash Hits poll winners party, after party, at the Groucho Club, got her card to meet her there and took her straight to The Big Breakfast at 3:30 in the morning.
Not content with filling the TV schedules, ladettes even started popping up in commercials.
Do you want a flake in that, love? Yeah, with Boddington's, it definitely mirrors what was going on culturally at the time, because for a woman to be strong and in control and drinking pints, just that image was so perfect for the time.
Squeaky clean pop stars all wanted in on some FHM action, aware of the magazine's amazing ability to reinvent or reposition.
It used to be a big thing where kids' TV presenters would use it to try and become an adult TV presenter, because that's naturally a very hard transition to make. So, you know, Holly Willoughby was obviously on kids' TV, like people like Cat Deely and all those. They started to do these sexy lads mag shoots to go, hey guys, I can do Saturday night telly with these boobies.
I think that was just what FHM did really well. They just kind of took people that you just didn't expect to be sexualized.
S Club 7 was firmly aimed at kids, but once they come to an end, what better way of rebooting your image than a tasteful cover shoot?
It was a chance for us to see ourselves in a different light, you know, and a bit more glamorous, and it also opened up a whole new fan base for us. So, yeah, it was just, you know, just an opportunity to be a bit more grown up.
Just going to place it here, Lucy.
After 10 years of Blue Peter, Connie Huck's appearance in FHM helped propel her onto mainstream TV.
Before, all you'd done is just see her make things, and now she was making me very excited.
In the final few years of the decade, everything Chris Evans touched turned to gold. And FHM were falling over themselves to report what the undisputed king of the lads was up to.
Oh, TFI Friday was just mental. So, you know, again, coming out of the Word, coming out of the Big Breakfast, going into this huge Friday night format, which embraced chaos.
The chainsaw's back again, so let's see. Let's see. There you go.
TFI Friday, where people were getting drunk on live TV, it was a revelation. It was like, yay, because it was permission to start boozing at lunchtime on a Friday.
Well, here we are in the bar of the show. It's the best bar in the world, this, because it's got no till.
Let's have a look. Amazing. OK, there's Chris. Yeah, that's absolutely when I knew him. Chris surrounded by a bevy of naked beauties.
Coming up, it was a toss-up between FHM's 100 cleverest women and FHM's 100 sexiest women. They went with the latter.
The sexiest 100 list was massive.
Why am I only 99?
And Gail Porter lights up the Houses of Parliament in the stunt of the century.
The whole world was talking about Gail Porter's arse.
In the UK, FHM is going to print with its final ever edition. For 30 years, it's led the way, defining lad culture. At the turn of the century, the magazine had gone global, being published in over 25 countries. They had confidence, they had swagger, they had barefaced cheek.
Do you want the good news? Yeah. They've asked me to come back next week! What a result!
I remember being asked to do a photo shoot for FHM. I was really confident about my body, and my boobs are a bit higher than they are now. And so, yeah, it was just a bit of a laugh, really.
The reason why FHM loved Gail and boys loved Gail is because she did have this very innocent fragility, but she had the body of a siren. It was the first time any of us had got completely naked.
They didn't really do bum covers. Bum covers were a sort of hitherto kind of uncharted territory, and she was topless.
I've got great tits.
It was all sexy bikini shoots, sexy lingerie shoots, and then Gail just went, off with them.
The magazine used the image to launch their Top 100 Sexiest Women campaign in the most brazen way you could possibly imagine.
Gail had her beautiful derriere projected up onto the side of the Houses of Parliament. So she was a sort of 150-foot bottom.
It was a shock for the nation, but a bigger shock for Gail.
I didn't know. So, no, nothing to do with me. I had no clue.
No! She didn't know they were going to do that. Oh, my God. Cheeky buggers.
If they'd have told her, she could have said no, and then they would have been in trouble. So they really had to go. That was part of the maverick element of Lads Mags. You know, you had to push the boundaries.
They put my image up there to propel the whole 100 Sexiest Women. You know, it was a publicity thing.
I think the greatest ever publicity stunt in the history of men's magazines, probably actually all magazines. The whole world was talking about Gail Porter's arse.
You've seen the film Notting Hill, and there's all those people outside. Shit. Suddenly, the local shopkeeper that didn't speak to me is like, hi. Like, oh, really? And then the postman would be like, hi. So suddenly I had a lot of friends. You can judge me all you like, but do you know what? My arse has been on Parliament.
As the UK entered the noughties, we were being bombarded with increasing amounts of sexual imagery. Women were largely the subject matter and had little choice but to suck it up or shy away from mainstream media. FHM had it all covered. Pretty girl, perfect pose, and the magazine would fly off the shelves.
When I was asked to be on the cover of FHM the first time, it's a big moment. It was a January edition, which comes out at Christmas, so it was a Christmas cover. It's something special. So, yeah, I was chuffed to bits. Look at me there.
You can't pay for that kind of marketing, and they're paying you 15 to 20 grand a pop? The concept is even crazy to me.
It's more of an honour, so you just take it. It was an opportunity that I just don't think I could turn down. It'd be a girl's dream to be in the front cover of a magazine.
The girls were calling the shots and being flown first class to the sexiest locations on the planet.
It was like going on holiday. You just have to wake up at 6 o'clock and shoot for a few hours. Then you just hang out at the resort, and then you shoot again for a few hours at sunset. It was so glamorous.
Taken to the most beautiful hotels and shot by the most amazing photographers, and you'd be in the sea and on a mountain. It was a time in my life where I was like, this is quite surreal, really.
They sent a helicopter to pick me up. It was all very glamorous and all very showbiz. I was like, yeah, I could get used to this.
The best photographers and stylists in the business were hired.
You've just got to let your hair down, you know, be confident and have a spray tan before you have your shoot.
And the models were taught all the tricks of the trade.
And I thought, oh, God, you want me to look at you in a sexy kind of way? Ooh. I remember the photographer saying to me, mince pie's eyes, mince pie's eyes. What's mince pie's eyes?
There was one of me doing, putting up my knickers, kind of just, looking into the sunset like that, That was my most uncomfortable shot because I felt like I had rolls of fat.
To walk in and all of a sudden be doing that, you know, it was a bit odd. You know, I'd stand behind her and sort of put my arms around her, and she was in underwear and so was I. You can see it on my face how uncomfortable I am.
My mum came. The funniest thing was she went, are you cold? It's like, I think I'm okay. She went, you look cold.
Like the most amazing thing, you see the pictures come out and they'd send me a magazine and I'd go, I don't look like that. I've never looked like that. I look amazing. Because they just enhanced you. Just a little shave of your leg here and a little sort of hoik of your boob here, and suddenly you've got more of a waist than you had. Because I can now go, look, that's what I used to look like.
FHM knew its readership, and its readership was lapping it up. Out of the model's rising popularity, a simple but brilliant idea was born. The 100 Sexiest poll went from a talking point to an annual event.
The Sexiest 100 list was massive. I would be so thrilled to death. I couldn't wait. Okay, am I gonna make it this year? Am I gonna make it on the list? What number am I gonna be? I mean, it meant something. It was so exciting, but not only that, the whole country came on board.
When Kat Deeley was on the cover of the 1998 100 Sexiest, and it sold like 926,000 because it was inside a foil bag, the sense of mystique and an occasion, and it just went ballistic.
I don't care what anyone says, every girl wants to believe that she's sexy and gorgeous and beautiful, and that's how being in the top 100 makes you feel. I was like in the 60s somewhere.
It's one of the things that's most brought up. I went to do Celebrity MasterChef, and Greg Wallace actually introduced me as one of the world's top 10 sexiest women. I was a bit disgruntled, thinking I've done so much, you know, I'm an actress, and I've written books, and I've done this, and I've done that, and what? I'm just known as being one of the top 10 sexiest women. And then I thought, get a grip, Lee. So it's not bad, is it? It's quite nice, really. Chill.
And everyone seems to get really excited about it every year. You go, OK, I'll go and get the magazine. Where am I ranked? And you have a little look through. You want to stay in position, right? So I was number 2, and then when I went down, I was like, oh, God, I've better shape up for next year because I'm slipping. It's all very tongue-in-cheek and fun, but you're like, hang on a minute, what's going on here? I'm number 6 this year.
If I went up a few notches, I have to admit, I was quite excited. Why am I only 99?
The list was at times surprisingly inclusive.
How did Mary Berry make the top 100? I suppose people love cake. Oh, these scones are great.
It was really something big. They had parties about it. All the nationals wrote about it.
I once went out for dinner with 2 of them at the same time. It was the best night of my life. Where did you come?
33 and proud.
Just being at the bar, I was sort of going, like, looking around, it's like, oh, that's Kylie Minogue. OK. Oh, that's J-Lo. All right. Melanie Sykes. And like the whole bar was like a who's who of like the hottest models in the world. And, you know, we were like, this is a bit scary because, you know, we were scared of women. But that's what the magazine was. It was getting you inside this velvet rope.
The magazine was constantly looking for its next cover star, and where better to look than the girl next door.
The High Street Honeys was such a huge success that about 15 different people now claim that they invented.
That's the concept, to find a high street honey.
Yeah, but like
a girl next door.
In the early noughties, young women had seen presenters and soap actresses make a career out of appearing in FHM, and so thousands jumped at the chance to get in on it.
Such a sought-after opportunity for so many girls.
Someone will be outside a shop and they go, I think we found one.
There were 6,000 entries into the High Street Honeys, and I'd made it into the top 100. So FHM produced a little booklet that came with the magazine, and there was my little picture in print. Unbelievable. And the public had to vote on who they wanted to go through to the top 10. And the winner of High Street Honeys, first ever non-celebrity to grace the cover of FHM, Tanya Robinson.
The FHM had never put an unknown girl on the cover before, and there was a certain amount of nervousness, and the issue actually sold very well.
My life just changed overnight. I went from sitting in a call centre, single mum with no money, living in North Yorkshire, and the next thing I was being flown everywhere in the world just for photo shoots. I'm only 5'3", like 1 inch taller than a dwarf.
It became a sensation. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
All the High Street Honeys got together with FHM and did a charity single called I Touched Myself.
And all of a sudden, girls out there who were maybe working on a shop on a Saturday suddenly felt that they could become a celebrity and, in a strange kind of way, did make stars of these people.
I got a record deal, modelled for big brands, loads of reality shows.
In 2004, rival UK publishers had an idea. Why wait a whole month to get your next fix of lad culture?
Women, don't expect any help on a Thursday.
On the 16th of January 2004, Nuts launched, and all of a sudden you had 2 magazines that were competing with FHM that combined were selling 500,000 copies a week. And they were very much aimed at the same kind of reader.
FHM wasn't like Nuts and Zoo, and I don't think it was ever going to become like Nuts and Zoo, because I don't think the appetite was there to go into that sort of extreme position with regard to the abuse and use of women for male gratification.
If you want to look good and not be bummy, yo, you better give me that money.
The girls doing like dirty phallic poses or with their legs open and their tits out, trying to do like a sexy pose. It's actually quite off-putting.
The weeklies were very much in the era of Big Brother, and suddenly girls could go into the Big Brother house as someone you'd never heard of. They could come out 14 weeks later.
Saskia, you have been evicted. Please leave the Big Brother house.
And suddenly they were being paid, you know, huge, huge checks. These girls could walk away with £40,000, £50,000.
FHM tried to compete with the weeklies on their terms.
Because there was only so much of a market for them to get their hands on, as soon as Zoo and Nuts came in and sort of declared totally that they were all about women, objectification, that was it. I just don't think they had any choice at that time.
The gap between men's magazines and pornography that was readily available online was becoming increasingly blurred. The accusations of misogyny began to have more than a hint of truth about them. And with the traditional lads going soft and embracing all things metrosexual, the backlash had begun. This month, FHM publishes its last ever magazine, and we're looking back at its funny, sexy, controversial 30-year history. By the mid-noughties, the magazine was reflecting a shift in laddism. Suddenly, we were told it was acceptable to be well-groomed.
Nowadays, you know what? Moisturising, manscaping, general cleanliness and hygiene, they're kind of like standard things.
Men actually want to be groomed. They're not ashamed to embrace how they look.
We're borderline women. We are.
Yeah, but we used to.
I'm even going underwear shopping now. I'm like,
mate, look how tight your jeans.
I'm trying on my underwear in the shop.
Look, when would you wear that? If you were going out before and you wore that to fucking on a night out, you would be laughed at.
With reality shows making stars of anyone who fancied being on the telly, there were attractive, ambitious women queuing up to model for the magazines. FHM tried to compete, but the more salacious they became, the more lads' mags felt strangely out of step with the time. It seemed everyone had an opinion, and politicians were queuing up to fill the airwaves.
Women's magazines tend to look at sex in the context of relationships. These magazines tend to look at sex in a rather more narrow fashion.
And what effect are you saying that has?
Well, I think it's part of a broader cultural phenomenon.
It wasn't just the sexy pictures that began to grate.
They firmly thought that the articles about women, what women wanted, how they wanted to be treated, was actually a true representation of what women wanted and how they wanted to be treated.
This new sexual politic that was coming in, where we had to strive for equality and more women in boardrooms, suddenly the table was turned over. It's like, no, we're not bothered about that. We just want to be lads.
But the models and staff have always maintained they felt empowered by working for the magazine.
Girls weren't doing it for boys. Girls were just having a laugh and being made to look really, really pretty. I mean, oh my God. You know, it's very nice to have a photo shoot that you can now look back on 20 years later and go, that's what I used to look like.
I don't think I would have lasted 7, 8 years in that office had it been in any way derogatory or, you know, undermining.
Women did it to promote their careers. You know, some of the models were earning far more than the staff ever did on those magazines.
Pressure group UK Feminista campaigned to get Nuts and Zoo banned from supermarkets.
This isn't about nudity, this is about sexism. And if a product is so sexist that you have to cover it up, well, you really shouldn't be selling it.
Our customers, our members are telling us that they feel uncomfortable with certain magazines being on display in a family store.
If you dance around the edges of acceptability, which is what men's magazines should do, then there's always a danger of falling foul.
Content exceeded anything that any normal person would consider to be reasonable.
Weekly lads mags had upped the ante, and FHM's sales were falling. And then came another problem, a little thing called the internet.
The decline of the lads' mags was really on the wall about 2003 when lads started getting broadband. And then quite soon after that, they started getting smartphones. Well, that was really the end. Because not only were they able to get stuff, you know, like pornography, but they'd get everything for free.
Men's interests haven't changed. They've broadened, but they haven't changed. But they are now getting information about all the stuff that they like digitally.
My phone, what it allows me to do is to communicate with people, and communication is the drug of the 21st century. I can communicate on Instagram with people, on Twitter, on Facebook.
It was very obvious that the internet is a huge magazine that you can edit yourself.
As a person on TV, I'm in control now through social media of my own output. I can put out a picture of me looking fabulous when I leave here and everybody will get it immediately. They don't have to wait to see me.
Titles like Loaded, Zoo and Nuts fell by the wayside. An explosion of sites means that navigating the internet became a key skill for the happening young gent.
I think Vice is good. Vice sort of balances between, like, really interesting journalism and is Shoreditch gay now? Like, you know, like those kind of, like, really sort of obtuse articles.
Lad culture has never been bigger. Now, we see now Lad Bible online. It's migrated online quite simply because it's free.
Instagram.
Is it?
Instagram's taking FHM's place.
That's really sad.
Nowadays, if you want to be a model, you take a photo, a selfie of yourself in the best light possible. You can probably face-tune the shit out of it and make yourself look unbelievable.
I think the experience of a platform where you can reach your audience in real time and they can comment, like, share, that is the big difference. And people send us, you know, a couple of thousand submissions a day.
I've gone from being a lad to being a dad. I've got a 6.5-year-old boy. And, you know, would I mind my son buying a lad mag? No, I wouldn't. For the simple reason that I know what's in those magazines and I know that it's not damaging. Would I be worried about my son surfing the internet, you know, unprotected? Yes. Because where's that journey going to end up?
For some, the legacy of FHM will always be that it was misogynistic. But it undeniably stopped men feeling bad about being men. Is there still a place for the lad, though?
I don't think you'll ever see the end of lad culture, even if FHM is now, you know, passed into the ether. I think that there will always be a lad culture.
I think in the mid-90s, there was a lot of affection around the term.
The term lad now is a badge of shame. Then it was a badge of honour. We particularly see on university campuses now, if you're a lad, then you're a problem. You're like a jihadist.
I think the tyranny of youth may actually be on the wane.
You can have a girlfriend and you can
still party.
Still party and you still be with your mates.
Bloody
Being
mates.
a lad is being with the lads.
Yeah.
So after 30 years, it's finally over. But there's one last edition and one final cover star.
Today is a big kind of fond farewell to FHM. Goodbye to all the faithful readers. I was around about 18 when I first did my very first FHM shoot, and it was fun. It's a lovely goodbye, and to be part of, you know, the iconic FHM. Once upon a time, it would have been something that I would have done and gone, yeah, absolutely, what shall I wear? Let me take this off. But now I'm 34, I'm a mum of 3, so that kind of terrified me, but also made me go, actually, no, go and do it. So it's just a big goodbye, and thanks so much for being part of it. Let me see.
So here we are at the end of the Lad Mag era. FHM defined a generation and made pots of money for the hundreds of women brave enough to appear in its pages.
I cannot believe this is the end. But boy, did you have a long, great run.
The last ever physical magazine, Lads Mag. It feels like growing up, this would never happen, this day would never come.
I owe a lot to FHM. I think they've been such a massive support to me throughout my career.
It just feels like an end of an amazing, long era.
You taught me a lot, and we're going to miss you.
Quite proud of the fact that I did some pictures that I looked pretty cool in, that I didn't feel like that ever.
I'm sad to see the back of it. I think actually it has its place, but having said that, it's no longer relevant, is it really?
Dads will miss it, lads will miss it, and even the feminists are going to miss it.
I would say that they actually launched this notion that a man could look good.
I look back on it with a lot of fondness, and I'm sure millions of young British men do as well.
Never going to happen again, is it?
Movies on the way tomorrow at 9 p.m. We're driving it like we stole it in The Fast and the Furious. Next, though, remember where it all began? It's American Pie after the break.